everybody. Welcome back to the Level 1 show. Today is August 9th, and we're doing government and security news. Not news, just random links.
Someone suggested calling it the weekend recap. Okay.
Yeah, the show is fine. And apparently I didn't catch it last week, but in the comments some people said you...
I said it, yeah. It's like, there's so many words you can't say anymore. It's really getting absurd.
We've been doing it so long, it's a force of habit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's definitely not that. It's definitely something else. And, of course, as usual, we're going to share some links with you. Just random links that we enjoy. Or hate. This one I enjoy a little bit, but I have no faith in.
Yeah, same.
U.S. attorneys general will take action against telecom providers enabling robocalls. I mean, I guess, but can't they go after the robocall providers? Have we become such capitalist machines that we don't even know who we're taking money from anymore?
They know. I'm fine. Let's just turn off all traffic from India, and as they prove that they're not telemarketers, we'll let them back in. What would be lost?
We could generate jobs here in America.
New robocall jobs. Yeah, that's the job everyone wants.
Oh, you know what? Let's take a book or a page out of India's book, right? If you want to have calls that terminate in the United States, then you're going to have to open up an office here. You're going to have a liaison that I can contact 24 hours a day and report telemarketers on your end.
That seems like fair play.
Hey, why not, huh?
I mean, that's foreshadowing for a bunch of stories that we have and some other stuff. I mean, that seems entirely reasonable.
Or just the past, and we've talked about that a lot in the past. Well, I was torn. Do you put this in social or do you put it in government? I chose government. I think because this is not necessarily a social metaverse. It's not as much social when the people in the metaverse you are trying to kill, even if it's simulating, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say it's different.
The U.S. Army, not Meta, is building the metaverse. And this article goes on to describe how the soldier of the future will, be wearing augmented reality goggles and be experiencing reality much as the pyro from experiences reality as they're murdering everyone.
So the metaverse part of this is that part of their defense training that they want to do in the VR space or the AR space is they want a hyper-realistic map of the Earth down to the trees. And they want all branches of government to have that same map and train in that same map. And someday, even be training with one another.
Sarge, I don't know what to do. There's supposed to be a tree here.
It must have fell in the last ice storm.
So, they have something like that. Although, much like Zuckerberg's metaverse, it's not quite there yet.
This is pretty cool. It'll be an artifact for some future civilization to discover after we destroy the planet. It's like, oh, this is what it was like. It's a hyper-realistic down to the millimeter map of the, before we...
Why is there so much garbage everywhere?
But in order to experience the beauty of past Earth, you have to keep a kill streak going or you get kicked out of the program. And speaking of kill streaks, the people who are in charge of that kind of thing... Now, no one has covered this. I don't know maybe if you've seen this, but I've read a couple of different articles about this, and I've never seen... Are these guys on their own network?
It seems like the answer is yes.
Because otherwise, there's several copies of this. We can find this because they're only talking about the actual handset here.
Yeah. January 6th, text messages on CNN. This is a CNN article. They were wiped from phones of key, Pentagon officials. I don't even want to. I mean, they were going out, and I don't know. The testimony from one of the people was, "Well, I didn't wipe my phone. I just turned it in because I resigned at the end of the last president's term, and if they wiped it, okay." That part seemed credible.
Yeah, I mean, these people. No one's accusing them of doing it themselves. Now they could have told somebody to do it, but that is not the only copy of those messages.
That's true. And it's also true that if this is standard operating procedure, the level of corruption that has to exist for this to just be normal operating procedure is like, the administration's changed. There's going to be a mass exodus of people loyal to the previous administration. It's just standard operating procedure to destroy anything that might be construed as a crime. Something has already failed. Like everything is already broken.
But it makes sense to wipe the device.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. But that does not destroy the record.
No.
What we're not being told here is what happened to those other records, unless there's some kind of special system at the DoD, which is entirely possible,
Or backups or something.
that purges that just to try and prevent leaks.
Well, we also have a lot of laws that are supposed to preserve this stuff, which those were also not followed. And so because of that, I think this is evidence of something nefarious, but there are innocent explanations. But in this case, there's something really strange going on because there's so many unanswered questions about just basic IT hygiene.
But no one is asking those questions.
Yes, exactly.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like even CNN, who you would expect to be, like a pit bull on this, are not asking about like, well,
they're gone.
Where did the text message go after you clicked send? Now, maybe it's like a end-to-end encryption type of deal that they're using, but like, tell us about that. I would like to understand that. Maybe that's a secret.
I wouldn't think so. Just like basic IT retention policies. I mean, inside a company for an outgoing CEO, when they turn in their phone, those backups are like normally kept for 6 months, a year.
Imagine Kalanick from Uber seeing this. And It's
Yeah.
like, oh, why couldn't we do that? Jesus.
I think also that when we have companies that are doing nefarious things, they're going to point at this and say, "Hey, the federal government does this. Why do we have to retain records for longer?"
Standard procedure.
Yeah.
Well, last week we learned about the big CHIPS Act, and there's some nasty stuff buried in that. The biggest one being, the discretionary spending,
It's just loopholes.
blank checks. But one thing that was not very widely reported, but now Bloomberg is telling us about it, is this little rule, this little bylaw that Taiwan needs to adhere to for the CHIPS Act.
U.S. to stop TSMC and Intel from adding advanced chip fabs in China. So any of this money or any of the companies that work with the companies that benefit from this money, I mean, TSMC is going to get some of this money because a lot of U.S. companies do business with TSMC. They're not allowed to expand into China. This is also weird, though, because Intel reported their earnings last quarter, and they said that they're still going to do the stock dividends, but in order to do the stock dividends, they're not going to spend $4-ish billion on their fab build-out. And that's weird. Because of the whole CHIPS Act.
That's a taxpayer subsidy for Intel stockholders.
It's like,
yeah,
but with more steps.
That's the dark truth of most of these spending bills, which is why we should stop spending. And
this was just a nothing burger.
but I mean,
Everyone was a little nervous this week, or I was a little.
yeah, when those rockets flew over your island,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, let's think about the future of what this means.
The angry blockade rectangles.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were some really angry rectangles. One was more of like what do you call it? Is it like a trapezoid? One.
Yeah.
Rhomboid.
Didn't one of those rockets also hit into like Japanese territorial waters as well?
Yeah, just a touch, and they were not
Not happy about it. Yeah.
happy. Yeah, but you got to do something right. You got to get out there and you got to talk to the public, and you got to sort of like not come out and say it, but like, hey, listen, guys, if something bad happens to us, something bad's going to happen to you.
Apple chip maker TSMC warns Taiwan-China war could make everybody losers.
I like that they just call it Apple chipmaker. Like, what a strange headline.
But that's a way to get Apple as the first headline word
Yeah.
to drive the clicks.
Yeah.
And it's, in other news, water
I need
is
my
wet.
new iPod, my iPhone.
Yeah. How do you make the normal millennial TikToker care about what's happening in Taiwan?
I mean, just the posturing here probably somewhat negatively impacted production. Like the IBM thing, like the IBM has the research foundry in New York. Can't wait to show you that. I did the trip there. But talking to those guys, they had an interstate or a state highway moved because there was a mobile home factory up the road from the research fab. And when a truck carrying a mobile home went by, it would disrupt the fabrication machinery, which was, a tenth of a mile away because of the vibrations from the highway traffic. And so they were pleased to say, look, we have a parking lot now instead of a highway that runs, through the facility because the vibrations from the truck were causing problems. So yeah, TSMC is even, it would be problematic if anything bad happened.
Are you saying that I should pull my investment from that chip fab in Ukraine that's going to
Pretty sure they're already not doing anything.
Oh man, it's like that time I invested in a water park in Flint, Michigan. So yeah, Taiwan has had other problems. It wasn't just the MLRS launches and the buzzes from the jets and the blockade. They also had some hacking going on. Now here's an interesting thing about China. From most of the coverage that I've seen, it seems like the Chinese people are pro taking back Taiwan. But how much of that is real?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
How much propaganda, I mean, I'm sure it's overwhelming, does the average Chinese citizen hear about Taiwan? So are there people in China who are like, maybe we shouldn't do that? Or are they totally for it? It's impossible to tell.
Attacks on Taiwan websites likely the work of Chinese hacktivists, researchers say. This is a Reuters. So they were denial of service type attacks and security attacks on like the presidential campaign website for Taiwan and some other stuff. Reuters had a pretty good write-up, but it was all just, standard fare.
But the point is, they believe it was citizen activists
Not
rather than
Chinese government.
But the line is so blurred there.
Yeah.
And so, like, how would we know for sure? How would it change the life of the average Chinese citizen if they did take back Taiwan? I would say not at all.
Yeah, I mean, how could it?
Maybe you could go there and get a job.
It's so crazy to think about. It's like, what if this was Puerto Rico? Like, what if Puerto Rico had some incredible industry? And it's like, oh, South America wants to take back Puerto Rico. And it's like, wait, what? That doesn't even make sense. South America's not even a country.
Yeah, but, I know this is unpopular, but you also have to think about it in the other direction of what if China wanted to put missiles in Cuba? Because that's coming next.
Yeah.
We probably have air bases in Taiwan, right?
Yeah.
That was the problem. So when the missiles hit near Japan, it was near Okinawa, which is where we have our bases.
Which
and everyone
was
was
surely on purpose.
Yeah, everyone was like, "Ooh, please don't do that."
Yeah, we don't even need aircraft carriers in the South China Sea.
Yeah.
Like, we got air bases everywhere there, which understandably could make you a little nervous,
Everyone's feeling a little nervous here at the Level 1 studios after watching this week's newest doom scroll.
I'm just going to enjoy my Threadripper with what little time I have left.
Well, you know who else is feeling nervous? Jack Ma. Now, he's given up the Ant Group. He's like, all right, guys, fine. Payments, sure, that's yours. You know what? I'm just done. I'm out of this. I'm just going to be over here enjoying Alibaba, where I made my fortune. And the U.S. sanctions stepped in and say, hang on there, Jack.
U.S. authorities threatened Alibaba with the New York Stock Exchange delisting. Now, the Register article here leaves out some really important stuff. But basically, the article says that the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, because of a new law in the U.S. that's really 2 years old, we can ask for financial information for foreign companies in order to audit them. And the article doesn't say it, but Alibaba did actually provide information. The dispute here is that the SEC thinks that what Alibaba provided is not real.
Which seems like there's a chance that might be true, based on what we've seen. I mean, have you seen China's numbers considering their real estate crash and bank lockouts?
It looks shockingly good.
They say everything's good, yeah.
And yet.
There is no recession.
That line that's like 20 blocks long of people trying to get their bank card unlocked because one night it was just like, oh, fraud detection. That's not real. Those don't exist.
That is the nightmare scenario with technology. It's like, oh, we're just being a little bit tinfoil hat warning you that that's how it would come. And then it's coming exactly the way it was predicted.
And you know what's happening to those people? They can't touch cash. They can't get cash at all. They can't use their card to pay for anything. They are now 100% locked into mobile payments.
Yeah.
And guess what happens if your QR code goes red?
The mobile payments stop working.
Everything stops working. You're not allowed to travel or leave your house or buy food.
It's like, I think the real crime against humanity here is that you can't really dispute it in a direct way. Whenever there's something, something happens, you're subjected to like this Kafka-esque maze of
bureaucracy.
And there's nothing you can do. And
I was watching a video about that and they were interviewing one guy and he was like, well, they told me it was fraud. So I said, okay. And I filled out the paperwork and they told me it'll be resolved in 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
That's just your money.
Yeah.
That's your living. That's how you pay for food.
And some people make a living in abnormal ways. They make their money doing things that most of us don't do. And those people can get in trouble just by being part of a platform that is unpopular among the powers that be.
Variety has a pretty decent write-up of the thing that happened, which is Visa, quote-unquote, intended to help Pornhub and its parent company monetize very bad things, the judge has found, allowing the case to move forward. So remember when Visa and MasterCard turned off payments for Pornhub like a year ago? Details are coming out in this case, and it is incredibly damning. It is very, very against... Pornhub may not survive. But the payment card industry has exposed themselves as well, which is a little surprising because usually they play it really safe.
But the quote here says, intended to help. I don't know they got proof of that.
That's a stretch, yeah.
This was when anybody could upload and monetize, and they didn't have to prove that they were the people in the video.
Well, since then, they allow people to do that, but they have to have a state ID on file. And the judge said that doesn't go far enough. Yeah. So it probably, not probably, it definitely happened. It seems like you could turn this around on bad things like the ATF has done around other things other than
did you see that video?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's 15 minutes of just happy time watching that. Like, it makes me, when I talk about hate naps,
Yeah.
that's the polar opposite of a hate nap, just bliss.
You're making a big mistake. No,
he throws out every excuse that every perp in every one of those videos throws out. It's so, the irony, it just oozes out of every one of his pores. He gives them the I can't breathe, which, come on. He gives them the cuffs are too tight. I have a medical condition. My favorite one, my wife is pregnant.
Pro tip, if somebody shows up at your house to inspect your guns, call the police because they're not.
If they don't have a warrant.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
Do you have a warrant? No. Okay, I'm going to call the police.
I'm going to go get one of those guns.
No, don't say that. You say, I lost that gun in a boating accident, and then you call 911. This is an interesting business model. You offer the world a thing, access to a thing, and you're like, you're going to love it, and here's what we want you to pay for it. And once you pay this, you can have all you want. And then they start using it a lot. They really, really, really enjoy it. And you're like, well, hang on a minute. This is too much. I need more money. But not from you. Just from other people who are also benefiting from this that are not part of our contract at all.
Reuters has the article, exclusive, big tech should share European network costs, France, Italy, and Spain say. Well, France, Italy, and Spain are wrong. I love it when countries think that they can imagine that the internet will work better than peering agreements, which have worked well since the 1970s. The market worked that one out. Like, it's good.
But also, the response from the governments and from the regulators should be like, well, if you feel that way, then get out of this business because there's so many people waiting to take over.
Yeah.
And they'll do it for a lot less than you'll do it. And they don't have this burden of a rotting limb of TV hanging off of their body. So,
please get a television subscription, please.
If you could just go ahead and die, everything will be better.
Yeah, if it were us, if we could run one of these, like the three of us could run one of these backbone networks without all of the baggage, are we going to be wealthy beyond the dreams of avarice? No. Are we going to have an incredible lifestyle and, salary bump and be making a ton of money? Yes, absolutely. The corrosion here is just from greed and trying to throw a monkey wrench into the thing under the guise of reasonableness. It's not reasonable. It's terrible. And some politicians are so stupid they could be convinced of that.
Now, I don't know what... Waterloo was actually in France, right?
This was a really hard to follow article. Like it didn't...
Oh, employee in the U.S. Maybe it's not Waterloo, France. Maybe it's...
Well, it's Destiny 2, and then there was some doxing, and then Bungie was involved.
But when I first read this headline, I was like, oh, God, another one of these where they're invading our privacy. But no, I see, the reason I'm asking about France is like, do they have the same threat laws that we do?
Oh.
Because this threat was real, and it was despicable what was done here.
Yeah.
Should you have anonymity here? I don't know. It's a really, really tough one to call.
Judge orders Waterloo business to name customers who doxed and threatened Bungie employees. So, yeah, if you're in the Destiny 2 scene, you probably know more about this than we do.
So there was a streamer. What was this dude's name? Anyway, there was some streamer, and his deal is, I believe he's African. He raps while he plays Destiny.
Okay.
Like he raps about what's
happening,
going on in Destiny, like freestyling while he's playing Destiny, which has to be difficult. I mean, it's hard enough just to talk while you're playing a game.
Yeah.
And I guess people didn't like that because they didn't like him. And they, of course, they went immediately to the race part of that and started attacking, started making death threats
to the employees of the game company that they could find online, including sending photos of their employee ID and just crazy stuff.
And ordering them a pizza.
Yeah.
So they had their home address. It was the person who tweeted it.
Yeah.
They didn't like the tweet for whatever reason. So, yeah. And they talk about swatting. I don't think that happened, but obviously that would be the next step. So,
what a bizarre thing to get angry over.
Maybe it's Canada, Ontario.
The judge said the employees don't plan to sue the users in Ontario, but they might sue in the U.S.
I don't like that you rap over this video game, so I'm going to threaten the employees of the video game.
Imagine feeling that strongly about Destiny.
Imagine feeling that strongly about anything anymore.
I mean, I could feel that strongly about like gun control, for example, something that really affects me. But Destiny, come on. Obviously, Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, I would feel that strongly about. That's more than a game.
Enough to order a pizza and send it to the developers to let them know that you know where they live?
Nah, probably not very much, actually.
Send them pizza, it's like, I love you guys.
When you put it like that, probably not.
When you actually sit down and think about all the steps it takes to actually do that, no.
This is not a tech story per se. I mean, it is a kind of technology.
This is some quality doom scroll.
It's going to creep into everything.
Yeah.
It's going to affect us. We might as well start talking about it.
Spain puts limits on air conditioning and heating to save energy in commercial buildings and public spaces.
I had to manually do the conversion here. It's like 27C. How unrealistic is 27C? That is slightly over 80 Fahrenheit.
Whew.
That would be a tough day.
Yeah.
Is Spain humid in the way that it is here? Because I think humidity makes it way worse, personally.
I don't know. Now, the Madrid president has said, no, they will not do this. But then some people came back and talked about there's an area in Madrid that has not had power for 2 years. I guess it's like a really poor area, maybe like a refugee type of situation. But I don't know. Engagement challenge for the Spanish people.
Do you have some sort of like wood-fired swamp cooler like in RimWorld? How does that work?
Poorly.
Yeah. Depends on how humid it is.
Not as good as a heat pump.
Yeah. Most people don't realize either that, a heat pump is only designed to move the temperature about 25 degrees. So on days that it's 100 degrees outside, you're just going to murder the heat pump if you're asking it to run at 65. It's just not going to happen.
And here's an odd double, like they've just turned completely around on this in India, and it's not clear why. Because we know that India loves tracking everything. They want to be China so bad, but they saw something here that spooked them.
India withdraws personal data bill that alarmed tech giants. TechCrunch doesn't really have a lot of details on this. It seems like the threats from the big tech industry to just exit were taken seriously, which is surprising.
But they have been playing chicken with that for a long time. I wonder why now.
Maybe they started pulling out. Maybe the VPN thing spooked them because a lot of VPN companies did pull out.
Yeah, could be.
Could be some backroom deals too.
We've also been following Indonesia, who had the same kind of deal that we've heard from in India, which is you have to have somebody in the country, like I was talking about before, with what we should be doing to India.
We reported that Yahoo and Steam was blocked years ago when it happened.
Yeah, and it's been a long time, but one by one, it seems like the companies are either doing what they want or they're giving up.
Indonesia has unblocked Steam and Yahoo, but Fortnite and FIFA are still banned. In order to get unbanned, you have to do the whole local office register, somebody's a contact to take down information that Indonesia finds unacceptable, blah, blah, blah. The bad, how we all suffer, even if you're not Indonesian, is the more that stuff like this happens, the more these kinds of systems will be built, the more they will be used on us for different things. Ha ha ha, no one would ask to block Yahoo, but absolutely there will be things that will be blocked that will fly under our radar, and we all suffer as a result.
Yeah, the dream of the internet is that everyone's connected.
If we didn't have the machinery to do that, then it wouldn't happen.
The dream of the internet is that everyone's connected. What we didn't consider was they would send pizzas maliciously. But do you think, so was it 2 weeks ago that Google announced they're like, oh, okay, we're going to do this. Do you think Yahoo and Steam were just waiting? It's like, let's see what they do. I don't want to be first.
I get the feeling Valve was working on this for a while, but Yahoo, I'm surprised Yahoo's still a thing. Does Yahoo even have the employee time to dedicate to somebody to work on that?
Now, this headline is not so much a breach or a leak per se. This is just an astounding number that shows you how bad Twitter apps are programmed. This is user error at massive scale.
Over 3,200 apps leak Twitter API keys, some allowing account hijacks. There's a lot. Researchers have figured out that some applications, like when you share a link or you do something with the application, it includes a token that can be used to get this kind of thing. Even Slack was not immune for this. If you shared a link from Slack, it would include a hashed version of your password in the WebSocket request. So, why? Why?
Because it's convenient.
Yeah, it's bad programming.
It's easy for these new developers to understand because these Twitter developers ain't right.
I'm just going to say that if you didn't build the machinery to track which user shared what link, that never would have been an issue in the first place. You brought this on yourselves.
And their response to that is like, have you seen our earnings? We have to do that or we will go away. Well, this is I don't remember if this was last week or the week before, but it's the second time we've had Google do something really stupid on the Play Store, immediately walk it back, and then just say like, no, we didn't mean to do that.
Google Play Store brings back version numbers in Android app listings. This is an updated headline. The original headline was Google Play Store hides version numbers in Android app listings.
Who thought that was a good idea?
They claim that no one did. It was a total accident. That's a big one, though. Who tested that?
A designer that doesn't have much programming experience. So we don't need version numbers.
But shouldn't they have a checklist of like, here's the things that we need on this page?
Oh, see, that's the thing that I always tell clients to start with. And so often when I work with other designers, they're just like, oh, I already designed something. I'm like, you didn't ask them what their requirements were? Like what?
No.
No, I heard the client name and then I just made a page for it.
Where's the critical information? I don't know, but look at these animations.
Yes.
I made the critical information and it's just like,
you didn't talk to the client about it? You didn't? Okay.
I mean, to be sure that the client sometimes has no idea.
Yeah, but usually a good starting point is to ask, hey, what are your goals for this project?
What
instead
do
of
you
just
think
making
is
it
important?
up. Yeah.
It's like, we need to have butter available on all the tables. And it's like,
And then their response is, our goal is to be the next Twitter. And you're like, look at the time.
I got to get out of here.
Yeah, we'll call. We will be in touch. Yeah. Now, this one is an alarming headline, but the good news here is that this is not the exploit. This is what happens to you after you get exploited.
New Gmail attack bypasses passwords and two-factor to read all email. Uh-oh. So
it's actually a hidden browser extension that gets installed after you've been phished.
And it steals your cookie. What
they've figured out is, it does what Google does. It literally waits till you go in.
Yeah.
And it just looks at everything and reports back. So it's low tech.
Yeah. Google has a hard time figuring out where that came from, too, because it looks like it came from your IP address. They're calling from inside the house.
They're using old weapons to get around the shields. Krista, how far are you into Dune at this point?
Not very far. I'm only like 2 chapters in.
Oh, they haven't pulled out the artillery yet?
No.
You watched the movie, right?
I did.
Okay. So
have you seen the movie?
No. I mean, I've seen the old one.
The old one. Have you seen the new one?
I'm waiting until they put the other one out.
So you can really make a good judgment on it.
Well, no, I just want to enjoy the whole thing without a cliffhanger.
I haven't read the book yet, but I thought the Dune movie was pretty good. Definitely felt like it was maybe a little rushed. Like there was too much stuff going on. That's why they had to break it into two parts.
But there's so much you got to tell.
Yeah.
Probably would have been a good TV show.
Yeah. I kind of had that vibe too.
Now here, I don't know. We got to come up with a phrase or a word to describe this. But this is where someone does an article to condemn one tiny portion of a thing that should be condemned in total.
Yeah.
Like this shouldn't be the argument. The argument should be these people shouldn't exist.
Data brokers resist pressure to stop collecting info on pregnant people. We shouldn't have to explain why you shouldn't collect information on pregnant people. But then we think about it, and it's like, wait a minute. Why are data brokers doing this in the first place?
Why do they have any data?
Yeah.
Why are there data brokers? This is about the whole abortion thing. So the idea is you could be victimized by going into the data set as being pregnant and then all of a sudden not being pregnant in the data set. So someone could buy that, federal government, we know that they do that, and then they could extrapolate and try to come after you.
That seems like an excellent way to keep taxpayers and citizens distracted while other more important things are going on.
Like trying to break into their homes over a shotgun.
Yeah.
And here's another small glimmer of hope, maybe. Don't know why they did this. Maybe just for the PR, but it's got to be good, right?
WhatsApp boss says no to AI filters policing encrypted chat. Yay! What's being proposed is that we read everyone's messages. I don't think that's what people want. Yeah!
What a perfect statement. That's it.
You really got that. No one can argue with that.
Yeah.
You are right. People do not want that.
And yet the tech chiefs in the UK say that we could do that. It's like, we could do that. We could also poison the water supply.
So they're giving the old, we're not going to do it here, and if you make us, we're just going to leave. Another game of chicken. I hope they stick to their guns.
Maybe they'll just say that they're not going to do it and then do it anyway.
The theme of this episode is, if you build the machinery, it's going to be misused.
How do you prevent that? How would you?
You don't build the machinery.
But what if you needed a way to communicate safely, right? Because we don't have that because of the situation we're in. And then the government steps in and they're like, oh, we'll take care of this. And in an eerie mirror of some stuff that happened, 40 years ago? One of those very quickly turns out to be almost, it seems, on purpose bad.
Yeah. Post-quantum encryption contender is taken out by a single-core PC in 1 hour. So there's 4 algorithms. Well, there were 3 algorithms that we talked about. There was a 4th algorithm that almost made it into the finalist list.
But it's actually different than that. Well, maybe it might still just be 3, but this was not one of the 4 finalists. This was one of the...
But it made it through a lot of rounds.
This was from the 5 through 8 list.
Yeah,
but it was still like honorary mention, yeah, this is really good.
Yeah, it was not good. It was, in fact, very bad.
And the guy that broke it, I mean, clearly this guy's operating on a different level than most people. Like, here was his explanation of it. But he was like, I'm kind of shocked. Like, this is some year 1 stuff that I'm doing here. No one did this?
It's funny.
That might just be him flexing.
I mean, that's also a classic with math problems. You know, math problems show up and they're like, oh, I'm all NP. I'm NP hard. And then you start looking at them, it's just like, psych, I'm only P.
Is there a T-shirt there? And God, sometimes I'm like, why even bother with these? But I think it's important to keep week after week reminding you what a bad idea this is.
U.S. crypto firm Nomad hit by $190 million theft. And this Reuters article is completely bereft of any details on exactly how that theft occurred.
I think it was...
Paywall.
It was the thing that moved between chains.
Yes, but how did they exploit that?
Well, I don't think they're going to give us the details.
There was also a mobile wallet exploit this week, and I wondered if the two were related. I wasn't sure.
The other terrifying security thing is that you can't really help is like, well, what about all the places where I'm giving them my credit card? What are they doing to safeguard things? Turns out, not enough.
Nothing. Literally nothing. Hackers stole the passwords for accessing 140,000 payment terminals, which, if they're able to physically or electronically access those payment terminals, can do a lot of fun things with those transactions.
Yeah, they basically can get into like an administrative dashboard.
Yep.
And do what they want.
I'm waiting for another Office Max hack, which is, in the beginning, banks were, oh, you should use a debit card because you have to enter a PIN, and there's no way that can be stolen. And then it's like, okay, that seems reasonable. And then you use your debit card instead of a credit card in the early days. This is very early days. And then some fraudulent transactions happen, and the bank's like, we're not giving you the money back because they had to have your PIN. And it's this weird nebulous thing. And then it turns out Office Max had misconfigured their terminals to such an extent that they were logging your PIN number. And you had to take the article to the bank to say, see, PIN numbers can be stolen. And eventually you get your money back. And from then on, you vowed never to use a PIN number.
Remember we were talking about like the constant, dealing with bureaucracy when you're dealing with a bank in China. And wait, that happened here too. Yeah.
I mean, so far they haven't brought out, a paddy wagon full of plainclothes thugs to beat us on the steps yet. But I don't think we're that far from that.
No.
There was an article I meant to add about the FDIC coming out and saying that to all these crypto providers, like, stop saying you're FDIC insured. You're not FDIC insured.
Oh, wow.
Stop it.
Yeah, when people are trying to break out a new coin or something, trying to pump it, they lie like crazy about all that stuff. It's the Wild West. So, restaurants, hotels, retail outlets, schools. What are we paying for with the debit cards at
Lunch.
school?
The school lunch.
It's all electronic.
It's really dystopian.
My mom would send me with a check usually, and it would be like enough to cover my lunch for the week.
You remember when the old regular Baptists would show up and just pay for all the really poor kids' lunches at the end of the year? It's like, oh, you get the peanut butter sandwich, and then they would just show up and be like, here, have biscuits and gravy. And it's like, oh, well, that's even better.
We never got biscuits and gravy.
We did from them, but then they were like, you can't have outside food on school grounds because it might be poisoned, and there was like it was a big deal.
That happens a lot with church outreach stuff, where like the church will try to do like food things or like clothing drives and stuff, and then some bureaucracy thing will come in and be like, no, you can't do that because.
Oh yeah, probably Cisco, not Tech Cisco, but SYSCO, who provides all that school lunch food.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you're going to make kids pay for it and they can't afford it, we might as well give them some church food. And then,
yeah, it's all kinds of problems like that where the church tries to step in to help and then no.
And this is also, we covered it last week, but I think CNET had a new article sort of rounding everything up. And once again, I think it's important every week to remind you of this because some of you, listen, I drive down the road. I see what's hanging off your door. Stop it.
Ring Google and the police. What to know about emergency requests for video footage.
They can get whatever they want. That's all you need to know.
The law lets Ring and Google share footage. This is actually a follow-up to an article we did last week, which talked about Ring, but I said, oh, this applies to Google as well. Somebody did an article saying, oh, yeah, let's see if we can get some info on how this is done with Google. And it turns out, yeah, absolutely.
So here we got some numbers. National security requests.
Yeah. Now, in the business section...
It's a range from 0 to 249. That's a big range.
So, in the business section, we're going to talk about how Amazon just acquired iRobot, which will have a map of the inside of your house.
Ugh.
Guess what else is going to be subject to this? It's an emergency. We need a map of your house.
My uncle has a Ring doorbell. And like when he said he was going to get one, I was like, why? Please don't.
And you might be thinking, well, I would never use Amazon or Google. I'm using, XYZ. Well, they looked at those as well.
Arlo, Yuli, and Wise, as well as Apple, which has the smart home video footage according to its HomeKit secure video. Listen, Level 1's got you covered. We've got at least a dozen smart home videos where you can roll your own that's just as good, cloud connected, tied in with Home Assistant, and there's no cloud nonsense.
We need to come up with a situation where, like, the video footage is there. So if they seize your equipment, it's in there. It's on the disk. It's encrypted, but it's also filled in. We use FFmpeg to inject the worst, horrible stuff. Basically like the Facebook moderator type stuff. We'll source it from 4chan so that whatever cop has to watch all that footage has to sit through all of that.
But then you get tagged for having it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll try to think of something legal, but
No, just pictures of pizza.
engagement challenge. What would be the most reprehensible thing that you could make a cop watch for 8 hours, but it would all be legal?
There might be a Level 1 store opportunity here to build our own Internet of Things devices that are not actually terrible.
I've got it. The Stephen Colbert Show.
All right.
We'll see you in the business section.